Your day is winding down. They're just getting started. This is South Coast Tonight with Chris McCarthy and Marcus Farrow. They've got you covered on all the news of the day, from local issues to politics on both sides of the aisle. This is the place where the movers and shakers come to be heard, to listen, and where they're held accountable. This is South Coast Tonight on WBSM.
Welcome to South Coast Tonight. Welcome to South Coast Tonight. I'm Marcus Farrow. We've had a great show so far. We had Will sent out the New Bedford Light. I've had you guys call in, but I'm joined now by Bristol County Sheriff Paul Heroux. Hey, Sheriff, how are you?
Hey, Marcus. Thanks for having me back on.
Absolutely. So, Sheriff, the last time I'd spoken with you was the day after you had made it known to us in the media that there had been a suicide at the Dartmouth House of Correction. You'd acknowledge that there were some, in your words, blind spots in the suicide policy that you'd work to address through, a third-party expert. Is there been any new developments in terms of the DA's investigation of that alleged suicide? And any new developments on getting the process going to get one of those experts in?
Well, nothing new to talk about in terms of, DA developments. But since we've last spoken, I have had, basically three different people come through the jail. Two of them were DOC people, and one of them was actually my former boss, Leon King from Philadelphia. He was the commissioner in Philadelphia, and then he ran the Baltimore system. And so he, stopped by. He was there. My dog is making a lot of noise right now, so I apologize.
It's okay. It happens all the time.
Away from her.
Yeah.
Take the toy away from her. So, so he actually was there today. He looked at a lot of the different things, just initial impressions to see if there's any glaring issues, not just with suicide issue, but a lot of different issues within the jail. And so he is giving me some recommendations. He's got almost probably 20 to 30 years of experience working in corrections between Philadelphia, working in Baltimore, plus all the work he does on the outside as well, doing the consulting and also working with inmates. But then the other two DOC folks, one was a commissioner of the DOC, Louis Spencer, and another one was Mike Corsini, who is the superintendent of numerous prisons. And they also gave me several pages of recommendations. And so these are things that I am taking and I'm going to be looking at very closely, bringing to the superintendent, bringing to the treatment staff, classification over the course of time, because, there's just so much to do right now. It's a new organization to me, so there's a lot I need to learn. But I'm also bringing on new staff as well. There's a handful of people that I'm bringing on because other people have left. And, we don't have a legal department. We really don't have a legal department. We don't really have a proper legal operation going on. We also don't really have a real personnel department or HR department. It's very disjointed, and some people are reporting over here and other people over here. They're not even in one office. So there's a lot of restructuring that needs to go on. But to the initial question about the suicide, I am going to be reaching out to a nationally recognized expert. He's somebody that my boss from Philadelphia had mentioned, and it just happens, by coincidence, happens to be the same person that the DOC folks mentioned. So this is somebody who is, a nationally recognized expert, and I'm hoping to bring him on as a contract to look at our operation from like top to bottom with respect to suicide, so we can figure out what it is a blind spot.
So is this going to have to go through, you talked about this going through the RFP process. Is this going to have to go through the RFP process, or will it take some time?
I don't know if this particular will have to go through the RFP process. I think it's because certain things have to go through an RFP process, but this one we might be able to just do a straight up contract. It depends on what Mass General Law says about this type of service. Okay. I don't think we're going to have to go through the RFP process. I think we can just reach out directly to the person I'm thinking of. That's been recommended to me by 3 different people now, and they didn't talk to each other about this. They all just came up with the same name.
Yeah, so sort of serendipitous, right? You had this person in mind, they all thought of them, and they all recommended him. So it seems, hopefully you're able to get that person aboard.
I had a person in mind, and all 3 of them recommended the same person. So
okay.
If all 3 people who are not talking to each other are recommending the same person, that probably means I should reach out to that person.
So we're speaking with Bristol County Sheriff Paul Heroux. I imagine even though you're going to reach out to that expert in suicide prevention protocols that come up in the evaluation that these 3 gentlemen had conducted, right?
Yeah, I know exactly who it is, and I am going to be reaching out. I've just had my 9th day of work. 3 of those days involved bringing in outside help, and so the first day I was there. So that's 3 days of outside help. That brings me down to 6 days. The first day I was there was, just basically having a staff meeting, and that was a good chunk of the day. That brings me down to 5 days, and then it's been meeting with different departments, learning who's who. One of the departments I met with was the the contract administrator, to figure out what the process is to bring somebody on a contract. So that's the first step. I can't just say, we're going to bring somebody on. Okay, well, what are the mechanics to make that happen? That's why I have to know who's in the organization to help make these things happen. And so there is somebody who's there, who's dedicated to doing contracts, and that is who I've already started talking with.
So we're speaking with Bristol County Sheriff Paul Heroux. So you said you've been meeting with department heads and staff. How has generally that been, your rapport with the staff so far? How have they responded to the new leadership at the House of Correction?
They've been good. They have been good. And I said this during my inauguration. I was one side's candidate, but now I'm everybody's sheriff. And so acting accordingly. The election is over. I never speak ill of Tom Hodgson, in the jail or otherwise. It's just the election's over. So I want to, move on, when we're doing that together. One of the things that I've impressed upon them is that they are the folks who they're the ones doing the work. They're the ones doing the work. And so if something, how do I put this? If they're telling me what needs to be done, and I'm listening to them about what needs to be done and how things need to be done, and I'm not going to get in trouble. If I end up getting myself in trouble, it's either because I got bad advice from them or I didn't listen to them. Right. So that's kind of the dynamic I'm going to have with the staff, is that we work together to do what's best for the organization. If they give me good advice and I take that, we're going to be in a good place. But if they give me bad advice, or if I don't listen, then we're going to have a problem. That's how I end up in the newspaper for things I don't want to be in the newspaper for.
So we're speaking with Bristol County Sheriff. Paul Heroux. We talked a little bit off air, but you have, in your early days as sheriff, I know you talked about some things, some changes that would be more immediate, and some changes that would be, over time, because you don't want to upset the apple cart, of course. But you have a new policy regarding sick time. Can you tell us about that?
Well, it's okay. So the sick time thing, you might have. So we have a problem where there's currently a use it or lose it policy. If you don't use your sick time, you lose it.
Okay.
And so a lot of people are basically banging out sick because they are sick of work. It's a stressful job. They need a mental health day. So they're sick of work, and so they're going to say, okay, I'm going to go ahead and come in to how do I say, I'm going to bang out sick. I'm not going to come to work. I'm tired. I'm sick of it. So when somebody does that, we have to pay them 100% of their salary. Their sick day is 100%. They get the sick day. If somebody does that, then we also have to pay them 150%. 150% when to pay somebody for overtime. So that's 250% for that one shift. What I'd rather do is, rather than, saying, okay, your sick day is worth 100% to you, I'd rather do this. I'd rather say your sick day is worth 100%. I'm going to make your sick day worth 125%. So instead of using it, instead of using that at 100%, why don't you sell it back to me for 125%? And you might say, well, where are you going to get the money for that? And where I get the money for that is because I'm not spending 150% on somebody coming in overtime.
Okay.
So it's an incentive it's an incentive for them not to bang out sick. And it basically makes it so that they say, geez, that sick day at 100%, it's now worth 125. And at the end of the year, they get to sell back their sick time. That can be as a $3,500 check, maybe $4,000 or $4,500, depends on who the CO is and how much they're making. So that will help reduce the number of people getting hooked for overtime. I mean, people will still be calling in sick, but when not as many people are getting hooked for overtime, it's going to help improve morale. And that's just one thing I have to look at. There's a lot of different things I have to look at, with respect to this, but, with respect to morale. But that's a sick idea. And the unions really like this. They like the idea. It puts more money in their pockets. It results in fewer people calling in sick, so that way fewer people get hooked for overtime. It saves the jail a little bit of money. It basically puts the control back in the correctional officer's hands, because they basically get to say, hey, I'm not going to call in sick. I want to go ahead and sell my sick time back. So it's just a win all the way around. But like I said, right now we have a use it or lose it policy. And of course, if you're going to lose it,
you're going to use it.
What? You're going to use it, yeah.
Right.
So that's normal human behavior.
So and what you're expecting is, since you'd have to pay the cost of the overtime pay would be 150% of the salary, you're expecting a net savings if people are allowed to sell their sick time back for 125%.
Yeah, you get a savings of 25%.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's and this only applies to. It only applies to positions like posts that have to be filled with a correctional officer. Because, for example, if a clerk calls in sick, we don't have to say, okay, we're hooking another clerk to do this job. Usually if a clerk calls in, then they can come into the next day and they just have more work in front of them. It just piles up. But we don't have to hook somebody and, force somebody to stay on overtime. With being a correctional officer, we have different housing units, and somebody has to be present for those housing units. That's why we have to hook people to do overtime. So it only works with those positions where we have to, have somebody come in. Like I said, a good example would be a clerk. We don't have to have somebody fill a position for a clerk. They can come in and, catch up on the work the next day.
How did you conceptualize this policy? Is this something you implemented as mayor of Attleboro, or is this something you've heard from other administrators?
No, when I was working in Philadelphia, the Philadelphia jail system, before I left, the commissioner, he had asked me, he said, Paul, can you look at our sick time? Because the same thing was going on down there. The same thing was going on. So, this basic guy, I looked at the sick time, because I was a numbers guy. I was not like an administrator, like a manager or anything. I worked directly for the commissioner. And, so I did analysis for him. And I said, okay, well, based on the number of people that are banging out sick, which was virtually everybody. I think it was something like, out of the 14 sick days per year, on average 13 or 11 or something. It was a really high number. Almost all of them were being used. So I came back and I said, hey, why don't you try this? And then that was at the end of his tenure, because then a new mayor came in, and the new mayor replaced him with somebody else. And that's when I came up to Massachusetts. So I don't think anything ever went anywhere with that down in Philadelphia. Sure. But I had it in the back of my mind the whole time. And then when probably 3 weeks ago, literally 3 weeks ago, when I was going out the door, I was finalizing some contracts with the unions. And one of the things that I included was an incentive for the DPW workers and not just DPW, but all the snow removal people. Basically said, okay, the snow removal people, that do the plows when it snows out, they were upset that they had to come to work when it was snowing out, even though it was their job. But the reason they were upset was because other people in City Hall, Library, Council on Aging, when we had a snow day, they got to go home and they got a paid day off.
Yeah.
But the snow folks were like, well, we don't get a paid day off. And it's like, no, you have to plow. So sometimes they started to bang out sick as well, because there was kind of a little bit of a frustration that everybody else in City Hall and Library. So we came up with an idea very similar to this. We said, how about this? We'll give you a stipend, and your stipend is going to be $1,500 every time if you attend and participate in 100% of the snow removal operations for the season. We're going to give you 100% of that $1,500. You just get it. You just show up for work. You just do what you're supposed to get. So the other people in City Hall, they don't get this stipend because they get the days off. So if they show up for every day, then they get 100%. If they miss, I don't know, like 50% of those snow days that they are called in, then their stipend goes down 50%.
Right.
So now it's an incentive for them to say, okay, you know what? Every time I don't come into work, whether I'm a CO or whether I'm a snow person, snow removal, I'm losing a big check at the end of the year. I'm losing a portion of that check. So every time they do that, it kind of hurts that big payout they get at the end of the year. So the laborers who do the snow removal, we have on any given day in Attleboro, we would have 100 plows on the road, and 2/3 of those were contractor and 1/3 were city employees. So those 1/3 of the city employees get this $1,500 stipend. But like I said, if somebody, like if Billy doesn't show up for 1/3 of the snow days, Billy loses 1/3 of his $1,500 stipend. He just lost $500.
Right. So we're speaking with Bristol County Sheriff Paul Heroux. So you talked about bringing on new staff to fill some positions. What positions were you looking to fill? And I know you talked about creating a new position in your inaugural speech. Has that position for inmate services? Has that position been filled yet?
No, not even close. That position probably won't even be filled until at least maybe July. It's going to be a while because I first have to create funding for it. I have to figure out how I'm going to fund it. It's not going to be an entry-level position. This is going to be a position where somebody, this director of inmate services, somebody who has experience running large operations with a lot of staff, multiple levels of or human care, whether it's medical, mental health, food. It's somebody who can multitask and look at a lot of different things.
Sure.
So that is something I have to create a job description for, and I have to get the funding for it. Okay. But just today, I finalized something with and this is, for the first time in public consumption, my personnel director in Attleboro, Owen Bebo. He was the personnel director in Attleboro, and he just gave his notice that he's going to be joining me down in the sheriff's office. He's going to be my director of administration.
Okay.
So earlier in the interview, I said, we don't really have an HR department or a personnel department. We have like one person over here and one person over there. And so I'm bringing him on board. He's basically taking the place of the old chief of staff. And so that's, we need to have a much more organized personnel and human resources operation because we have, workers' comp, we have, people coming on board that are new, people leaving retirement. There's a lot of different things, FMLA. And I need to bring somebody on who knows how to organize all of that, kind of the administrative side of running a jail or running any organization. But then I also need to bring on a general counsel, somebody who has experience in criminal justice matters, who's versatile, who can do a lot of different things. And I'm in talks with somebody right now who I used to work with at the State House. I met with her last week. It was actually only, quite honestly, I think it was the second time we ever met in person, because we knew who each other were when I was at the State House as a state rep, and I knew who she was doing her, capacity as a legal counsel. But she's general counsel for one of the committees. So, I met up, I was trying to recruit her. I thought she would be a good fit. And so it looks like we're going to bring her on, and that will, help with our legal operation. We have lawsuits pending. Excuse me, I'm sorry. We have lawsuits. We have, labor issues. And actually, for the labor issue, I was hoping to bring on one person. He's not taking any new clients, so he's going to help out in kind of an advisory capacity.
Sure.
And but there's so I need to find a labor attorney, somebody who's going to really can take on all the different labor issues we have, grievances and ULPs and
Right.
things I need to resolve.
Of course.
So there's a number of people that I need to bring on. Because for me to run the organization, I need to have it properly staffed with people who know what they're doing. And there's a lot of that there now, but there's also a lot of vacancies. A lot of people left after Tom, left office, or just before Tom left office.
They left in protest?
I don't think they left in protest. I think some of it was just time.
Yeah.
I think there were actually, I heard there was just one person I know of that left in protest. I only know of that one, but there's a number of people who, I think a lot of people were really nervous. Oh my gosh, I'm going to get cut. And, there are going to be some positions that, as I've learned more and talked more, there are going to be some positions that I'm terminating. I'm getting rid of those positions because they're basically sort of redundant, and I need to free up money to do something like hire a director of inmate services. Another position I had talked about sort of on the side, but now I'm starting to think about it more seriously, as an inmate ombudsman. So that's somebody who is roving throughout the jail, getting complaints from inmates, trying to resolve those inmate complaints to the best they can. When they can't resolve an inmate complaint, explain why they can't resolve the inmate complaint, because I want inmates to not get to the point of frustration where they start acting out. I want them to, basically, express what their concerns are, get a response, and that way we have a safe, harmonious jail, because I don't want anything happening to COs because inmates are upset about something. And
Sure.
Somebody might say, well, who cares about what the COs, what they want? Just keep them locked up. It doesn't work like that. You keep people just locked up, you treat them like a caged animal. You're creating a powder keg, and you're creating a dangerous situation. So, there has to be, a respect and, a certain dignity that you grant to the people who are locked up and in your custody. And so I need to make sure we are doing that as well, because a lot of times inmates, they'll grab the ear of whoever walks on a cell block, and there's nothing those people can do. And then they said something to somebody, but then nothing ever happens. I told this person, they came on the block, and I know I told this, and they complained about this, and nobody's listening to me. So I would like to have an inmate ombudsman.
So we're speaking with Bristol County Sheriff Paul Heroux. You said you were going to cut some positions because of redundancies and to free up some of the budget to create the positions that you do want to create, that you think are best to move the correction system forward. The employees that are going to lose their positions, are they going to be offered any alternatives, or is there going to be a severance package situation?
Yeah, so the first thing I'd like to do is then point out to those employees, say, look, I've determined that you have this position. I've spoken with supervisors, and, this position's redundant. It's not necessary. It's not part of my vision for the jail. However, we have a couple of vacancies or, some things over here. We'll be at the top of the list of those. I want to make sure it's a good fit, though. If there's a vacancy in the civil division, but we have somebody who's a clerk, and the clerk, isn't really the right person to work in the civil division, then I don't want to set the civil division up with somebody who's going to fail. That's not good or useful for anybody. So it has to be the right fit. If we can't work it out like that, then, I would try to do some type of severance package where you put somebody on administrative leave for a certain period of time, and then, they eventually, when that runs out, then they would basically end up with unemployment. But with a severance package, you would get a much better weekly salary than unemployment. Unemployment might be around 60% or so, but it's we'd like to at least give people a chance to try and get a job within the jail, and if they can't, then you give them a chance to get something else, but keep their try and take care of them the best we can in that transition for them.
We're speaking with Bristol County Sheriff Paul Heroux. So there's one thing I wanted to ask you. You had talked about, I know there was a lot of conversation we've had on the air and about Ash Street, and you talked about some of the logistical difficulties there would be in closing it. But there's still a conversation open about that. Has that been addressed by these experts that you've brought in?
No, Ash Street, I kind of came up with what to do about that on my own, and it was because Sheriff Hodgson said something couldn't be done. That made me look at workarounds. So Sheriff Hodgson heard a rumor that I was going to take the inmates from Ash Street and put them in the ICE Detention Center.
Okay.
And I said, no, I never even heard about that. I never even thought about it. There's a lot of rumors that were circulating. There was a rumor that I was going to change the inmates, I'm not the inmates, I'm sorry, the correctional officer uniform, the color of the uniform. And there's like rumors about everything.
Yeah.
So one of the rumors that Hodgson heard was that I was going to, just take the inmates from Ash Street and put them in ICE Detention Center. He then said to me, you can't do that. And I said, well, I wasn't thinking about that, but why can't I do that? He said, well, because the Ash Street has single cells. They're all individual cells, and the inmates who are in those individual cells need to be in an individual cell, whereas at ICE Detention Center, it's two very large, open, sort of gymnasium-like.
Right.
And I said, okay, well, that's not a big deal. All we have to do is retrofit the ICE Detention Center. So on January 27th, I have the state delegation coming to the jail. I've invited a bunch of them, and I invited the governor as well, although I don't know when she's going to be able to make it, maybe not the 27th, but at some point I'd like to have her down so I can show her what my plan is. But I'm basically going to say, here's Ash Street. Let's go take a look at it. You'll see what Ash Street looks like. And now I'm going to show them how much it costs to operate Ash Street. And then I'm going to bring them over to the ICE Detention Center and say, you see this right here? This big open space, we just basically have a shell. Let's fortify the shell, develop some, single cells inside the detention center. 30 on one side, 30 on the other. 30, 30, 30, 30. So it would be 60 on one side and 60 on the other. So 120 cells, a little bit of a buffer from what we have at Ash Street, or what we're currently using. And so my bottom line is, I will close Ash Street, and I'll do it the right way. Slowly and, thoughtfully.
This is big news. So you have a plan to close Ash Street, is what you're telling me. You have a plan, if you get state approval and state funding, you have a plan to close Ash Street, and that's by fitting out the ICE Detention Center, and you think there's going to be enough space there to do that? I do, yeah. And so basically what I'm going to say to the legislature is, if you want me to close Ash Street, I will close Ash Street, but you just have to give me the money to do it. Yeah. And here's how, and we work with DCAM to make that happen. We get the engineers and the architects in to make sure we properly do everything to the size specifications they want. But there's plenty of space in there to have 120, at least 100 single cells. And there's a moratorium on new prison construction right now in Massachusetts. But this isn't new prison construction. This is retrofitting existing inmate space, and arguably it's actually downsizing, because then we could close Ash Street, which has a lot more than 120 single cells, I think several hundred. So it would be reallocating, existing cells. But yeah, I have a plan. In what I do in politics, coming up with solutions is not usually difficult. Even implementing solutions isn't very difficult. It's the in-between thing. It's when you come up with an idea and when you implement it, it's getting the buy-in from the stakeholders who are going to cooperate to help make it happen. So problem solving isn't really all that difficult. And actually the execution isn't that difficult. It's the in-between that's the challenge. And so now I have to convince a state delegation, and therefore they have to convince the state house, and we have to get the governor on board with this too, to basically say, yeah, you want to close Ash Street, I will close Ash Street, here's how we can do it, here's where we can do it, just give me the money to do it, and I'll do it. That's big news. That's definitely big news. So you're hoping the 27th members of the state delegation are going to tour Ash Street with you, and then look at the ICE Detention Center? Is that the plan?
Yeah, I've gotten numerous commitments already. I'm already behind, 200 emails. And just be forewarned to everybody, I'm always behind on emails. Mm-hmm. But I've already gotten several of the state delegation members to commit to this. I would also like to invite some of the other folks, Chair of Judiciary Committee on both the House and the Senate, Chair of the Bonding
Jamie Eldridge, who was at your swearing in.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Great guy. Yep. He's so I'm going to invite him as well. But like I said, Ash Street is high.
Is that going to be open to the media?
We're going to probably do something with that. I might do like a press release, a press conference at the end of this.
Okay.
But I mean, you've been covering this longer than I've even known about it as an issue, that Ash Street is highly controversial.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically, like I'm repeating myself, if you want me to close Ash Street, I will close Ash Street. Just give me the resources I need to do it. And we're going to do it properly, and we're not going to do it alone. We'll do it with DCAM, Division of Capital Asset Management. We'll get architects and engineers involved and make sure that we run a proper operation with the ICE Detention Center. We're going to turn that, basically relocate the operation from Ash Street to that building. So yeah, that's kind of.
This is the first time you said this on the record, by the way, that you have a plan to close Ash Street. Just wondering.
I don't remember. I mean, it's just kind of all a big blur.
I'm going to say it is. I'm going to say it is.
I thought. I think you're the one that's the first one that's really hopping on the idea. I think I talked about it on WSAR the other day.
Okay.
But no, it hasn't really gained any traction. I don't think anybody's really paying it much attention.
Well, it's about to.
I mean, Yeah, I mean, you're paying attention, but I think other people just say, "Oh, it's great, close Ash Street," but I don't think others appreciate the significance of it in the way that you are getting right now. But not just Ash Street, but we have the annex building. Switching gears, we have the annex building across the street from the Dartmouth facility. The annex building across the street from the main campus, and so we're spending $144,000 a year on that building. And that over the course of 10 years, that's almost $1.5 million. So rather than throwing money away on a lease or rent, why don't we, get the upfront investment and build something, prefab metal building on campus. We got space in several different places for a training academy, because that's a big chunk of what they do inside that annex building across the street. And so that's another thing I'm going to be pitching to the state delegation. Say, hey, look, this will pay for itself pretty quickly if we build a training academy, on campus. We don't have to lease anymore. We might have to. It might cost us, for a prefab metal building, hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe even $1 million. But it quickly pays for itself when we don't have to keep renewing that lease at $144,000 a year, on end. And so we also get to design a training academy. And I told this to the director, Bobby Mattis, if I remember his name correctly. His name was Bobby Mattis. He's director of Training Academy. I said, design just kind of superficially what you would like to see a training academy look like. Include a gun range, because we have to have certification and qualification. So, what are you using guns in jail? Now, there's certain things that we certain elements of the operation that do need that for training purposes and recertification, number of hours in the. So I told him, I said, design that, and then what I'll do is I'll try and get the money up front from the state delegation and show them, hey, look, if over the course of time, this is going to pay for itself. So there's little things like that I've been working on to try to, and there's another big one. This is I've said this before, but that mobile command center, that's something we're going to be donating probably to the Taunton Police Department, because they were the first ones to say, hey, we'd like to have it. Sure. So that was something that a lot of people in the community looked at, there was a lot of different opinions about it. Some people said, yes, that's a wonderful thing. And I think most people really felt like it was, government overreach. It was just a little bit too much of imposition, of the jail, in the community. And so I think a lot of people felt, and I don't think we're going to give it to Taunton. Taunton can use it for whatever they want to do, and they can lend it out to anybody else that, for mutual aid if they need it. But, so we'll be getting rid of the mobile command center.
Sheriff, I'm woefully behind my commercial schedule, so I'm going to hold you. Cool. I'm going to hold you there. But I do, with respect to the mobile command center and maybe the broader conversation on law enforcement, the continued role of law enforcement, the sheriff's office and all that. I'd definitely like to have you back on sometime in the near future to discuss that. But I appreciate you coming on and talking about these really important issues.
Cool. Sounds good. Look forward to coming back on.
All right. Thank you, Sheriff. All right, that was Sheriff Paul Heroux. I got to take a break. I see some calls on the line. We'll take a break and we'll be right back. This is South Coast Tonight. I'm Marcus Farrow.
New Bedford's News Talk Station.
899-60500 second the program. I saw a couple calls dropped off. I don't know. Perhaps people didn't want to wait during the commercial break. That's okay. I'm still here, and I'm here till 10 o'clock at 508-996-0500. Tell you what, I'm going to take this time to take my second break because, again, I was woefully behind in commercials. So I'm going to do it again.
1420 WBSM, where freedom of speech lives. Your voice heard right now on South Coast Tonight. Call 508-996-0500 or send an app chat message on the WBSM app. Now, back to Chris and Marcus.
Hey, welcome back to the show. I'm Marcus Farrow. 508-996-0500 is how you can get in the show this evening. That was big news from Sheriff Heroux. He has a plan to close the Ash Street jail. He has a plan. He announced it here on South Coast tonight in sort of a laissez-faire way, but I do appreciate it. He has a plan to close Ash Street jail. That is something that that is something that the people who were supporting him really wanted him to do. It's something that he had said he'd considered, but he'd always been weary on his ability to do it, but he seems to have a plan. He's just going to need the state to help him out. Good evening, you're live.
Hi. I had a question for Sheriff Heroux, but he's gone now, right? One of my problems with when he was in the election against Sheriff Hodgson, he thought that the amount of time that he was sheriff was a problem, and he thought you shouldn't be a sheriff for that long, and it wasn't helpful to the situation. But the first thing he did after he got elected, he said he was bringing a former boss and a couple of former workers who had over 100 years experience between the three of them to go through the prison systems and to give them the benefit of their expertise. Now, why is it a bragging point on the people he knows, and it was a bad decision on Hodgson's point?
I think what he said was elected officials in executive positions shouldn't serve more than a couple of terms.
These people weren't elected officials at all?
No, I don't believe they were. They were people they were administrators. One worked for the Department of Correction, and a couple worked for the Department of Correction.
If you get a job and you like it, and people keep electing you,
I think the issues...
Why would you want to not take
apparently,
it if you like it? Yeah,
I think that issue's been thoroughly litigated by now, but I think there's probably... you know what? That did speak to sort of Hodgson's point that it's a profession, and that it's a profession, and that it's something that you do spend a lot of time in. And if it wasn't an elected position, you would be just talking about, oh, he's a professional corrections administrator. I think that's a good point. But I think Heroux said just in elected capacities, he's a believer in term limits for the executive branch. So, I guess point well taken. But he's, again, those people that he invited on were administrators, not elected officials.
Well, just thought I'd ask him. It was too late, though. But sure. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks. So that's major news because Sheriff Heroux was originally non-committal about closing Ash Street Jail. In fact, I think he was leaning towards, when we talked about it, it seemed as though he was giving himself some electoral escape hatches, right? To not close Ash Street Jail. He talked about the logistical difficulties, how he talked to the jail's superintendent about some people there need an individual cell because of certain concerns in terms of gang relation and other things, and that there is an issue of overcrowding in Dartmouth. So I think throughout his campaign, he was giving himself solid ground to say, listen, I can't close Ash Street, but there may be things I need to do. And then he even said, I think during when he toured Ash Street, when he toured the facilities with Hodgson, that he actually didn't, that he actually thought that, at first glance that Ash Street Jail was fit for inmate housing. And the Ash Street, for people who don't know, I don't know how you don't know, it's the oldest jail in the country, oldest operating jail in the country, or one of the oldest. I think one of those things, it all depends on who you're talking to. But, that's major news. That's major news. And that's going to be a major policy point going forward. And you heard it here first on South Coast Tonight. So I do appreciate the sheriff coming in. 508-996-0500 is how you can join us this evening. So what I'll do is I'll take one more break to the end for the hour, and then we'll be right back. This is South Coast Tonight. I'm Marcus.
If you want to hear everything.
Marcus, 508-996-0500 is how you can join me if you want to hop on. Got a few minutes left before the program ends. Major breaking news from Sheriff Paul Heroux here on South Coast Tonight that he has a plan to close Ash Street. He has a plan to close Ash Street. He's going to need the governor's assistance. He's going to need the state delegation's assistance to get that done. But he has a plan to close Ash Street. That is major breaking news. You heard it here first on South Coast Tonight. And we thank Sheriff Heroux for making himself available and breaking that news here. Again, one of the sticking points for a lot of people who had supported Sheriff Heroux was they wanted Ash Street to close. And he was non-committal about it. He seemed to be, I don't want to say content, but he seemed to be okay with leaving it open. I guess I just said the same thing, right? He seemed to be okay with leaving it open. Someone's sending me a message, Marcus, in all caps. So that's nice. So, Marcus from Wally in New Bedford. Hey, Wally. I'm sorry. So anyway, 508-996-0500 is how you can get in the program. Yeah, Marcus from Wally, New Bedford, in all caps. I don't know if there's anything else in that. Oh, sorry. I just got a few other app chat messages. Can tell you what, I don't have time. I can get to it tomorrow. Just, it's kind of hard to manage everything, but sounds like he just wants to shut stuff down and build all new. Wonder if there's any bids coming in. Why get rid of mobile command? And why not rent cities ever emergency services? Yeah, I'll have a more Wally from New Bedford. I'll have a more robust discussion with him on the command center later. It was just a matter of time. I didn't have enough time to talk to him about that. But again, this is not all he wants to do is shut stuff down. He talked a lot about maintaining continuity of operations, but one of the things that a lot of people wanted him to do was close Ash Street. A lot of people feel as though it's a dated, antiquated system and not really fit for inmate habitation. The ICE Detention Center is definitely a significantly newer facility, right? So, someone said, good politician, very quick shift from last time. I think he came up with a solution to a problem and he's implementing it, I think that's it, I think that's it. So that's weird. I'm having a difficult time with the app chat message. Guys, I will get to your app chat messages. If I didn't get them tonight, I'll get to them tomorrow. I'm having a heck of a time here. But again, thanks to Sheriff Heroux breaking that news here on South Coast Tonight. We're going to probably talk more about this tomorrow. We're going to definitely talk more about this tomorrow. I've got a good show planned for you ahead anyway, but we'll definitely reserve some time to talk about that at some point in the show. So that's pretty much it, guys. Thanks so much for coming on. Thanks so much for calling in, sending an app chat message. Thanks to Sheriff Heroux, Will Senat of the New Bedford Light. And I'll see you tomorrow.